Imagine waking up each morning already knowing which trades will soar and which will crash. No predictions, no risk, just flawless certainty because you've already lived the day before. What if someone built a system to exploit this time loop, turning yesterday's knowledge into today's unstoppable fortune? And what if that power fell into the wrong hands? For Elena Torres, that line was a cruel joke. At 32, she was a data analyst in a cramped office in Brooklyn, balancing a budget that looked more like a tightrope than a spreadsheet. The rent was a constant drumbeat of, I need to find a way to make more money. And the city skyline seemed to mock her, each glass tower a reminder that she was not getting a corner office. The last time she'd been a kid, she'd traded her allowance for a comic book that she never read now. She traded her hours for a paycheck that barely kept the lights on. Her life was ordinary, and that ordinary was a cage. She worked 12-hour days, watched the same traffic lights, and spent her evenings watching the markets on her phone, the green ticks of small gains always eclipsed by the dark sea of losses. The financial markets felt like a maze designed to swallow her whole, with no exit. She dreamed of being a trader who could read the market, but the only language she spoke was the dull grammar of algorithms and the relentless noise of numbers. One night, after a day that ended with her boss's thin smile and a polite, "Keep up the good work," Elena was scrolling through a forum called the Quantum Exchange, a niche community of people who whispered about impossible finance. The thread that caught her eye was titled, "A Hidden Index That Can Predict Market Crashes Before They Happen." She clicked it. The page was a jumble of code and philosophy, a post by a user known only as Murmur. The post began with a question: what if we could see a market's future, not through charts but through quantum probability? Then it offered a link to a paper titled The Quantum Stock, a quantum stock of systemic risk. Elena's fingers trembled as she hit the link. The PDF was a storm of equations, but embedded in the margins were comments: "Do not publish, it changes everything." The document ended with a single line: "The next crash is not a shock, it is an inevitability." The index tells us when. The thought that she had stumbled into a secret that could change her life like the flick of a coin struck her deeply. Her curiosity was now a spark she couldn't extinguish. She stayed up that night, her phone buzzing with notifications from her boss's email. The first thing she did was pull the paper offline, save the PDF, and close her laptop with the click of a mouse that felt like the closing of a chapter. She decided she would find out what that index was and if it was real. The next day she started to dig. The Quantum Exchange was a labyrinth of private threads and cryptic messages. The only way to find the truth was to find the mentors who kept the knowledge alive. She found them in an old forum, an email thread that had been archived for years. The name of the mentor was Dr. Samuel Hargrove, a quantum physicist who had been working in a clandestine lab before his abrupt disappearance. Rumor had it he had found a way to turn quantum decoherence into a predictive algorithm for market crashes. Elena reached out. She didn't know anyone who would believe a woman with a data analyst degree and a broken phone would be a worthy candidate for such knowledge, but her desperation turned into determination. After a week of unanswered emails and vague replies, a new message appeared, simply signed Hermit. It said, "You have the courage to look where most fear to see. Come to my office at 3015 on Friday at 17 Broadway, the one behind the coffee shop." Elena walked to the location the next Friday, a narrow, dimly lit office with a single laptop on her desk. The lights were too low, but the air smelled of ozone and old books. Hermit was a tall, thin man with a face as lined as the pages of an old ledger. He spoke in a voice that sounded like an old record. "The quantum stock is not a tool, it is a mirror." He told Elena that the index was built from a combination of quantum field theory, entropy calculations, and a proprietary data feed that read the subtle tremors in the financial system like a heartbeat before a heart attack. It could not tell her when a specific stock would go up, it could only say when the system would tip. If she knew the time of a crash, she could position her portfolio to avoid the collapse, and more importantly, she could trade the market itself, buying safety on the edge of ruin. Hermit offered her a prototype, a set of algorithms that fed live market data into a quantum simulator producing a single number, the quantum crash index. The lower the number, the higher the probability of a crash within the next week. Elena's heart thudded. She tested it on a back-tested data set. The index predicted the crash of 2008 with uncanny accuracy. Elena stared at the screen. She felt the same thrill that had once rushed through her when she found a new hack in a game. She realized that her life could be transformed if she could use this knowledge. Her first experiment was small. She bought a little more in index funds, but she also bought put options on a few high beta tech stocks. She watched the numbers dance. On the day the index hit a low, the tech stocks fell. Elena's account dropped, but then the market rebounded and her puts paid off. She earned more than she'd made in months. Her excitement turned into obsession. She began to run the index every morning, watching her money grow. Her savings grew, her rent was paid, and the fear of poverty faded. With the quantum stock, Elena felt powerful. The line between random and predictable blurred. She could avoid the crash of 2002, the collapse of a major bank, the sudden spike in oil prices. She could trade in the shadow of inevitable turmoil. Yet every time the index hit a low, her stomach turned. The system's success felt like a gift, but also a curse. The market was a living organism. She had discovered a way to see its heart, but the knowledge came with an ethical weight. She could use it for personal gain, but she could also choose to share it, to save millions of people from ruin. She wondered what would happen if everyone had the same knowledge. Would the market become a machine of mutual assured destruction, where the first to see a crash could trade it away, creating a perfect market? Or would the knowledge collapse into chaos? As markets are always full of people whose greed creates more volatility, the first twist appeared when her success began to attract attention. A small but powerful hedge fund, the kind of company that made fortunes on the edge of the market, sent a team of lawyers to her office. They offered her a deal, a partnership, a share of the profits, a guarantee of safety. Elena felt the old fear that had haunted her since childhood, that a deal would be a trap. She rejected them, but the threat remained. She was now a target. Her next experiment was more dangerous. She began to run the index on a live trading platform, feeding the quantum predictions into a bot that would buy or sell based on the index's alerts. She had never traded this way before. It was like riding a wave that only she could see. The market was a beast. It was merciless. When the index predicted a crash, her bot would automatically short the market. In the hours before the crash, the market would spike, then plummet, and the bot would reap the profit. The money was staggering. Elena felt the thrill of being a god in a world that was built on mortal hands. But with great power comes a heavy price. When the quantum index predicted a major crash in March, Elena's bot sold off billions of dollars in short positions. The market crashed, but the panic spread like wildfire. People lost their jobs, their savings, and the economy dipped. Elena watched the news of families losing their homes, a small community of retirees who had saved for a lifetime to go bankrupt. She saw the tears on her own face in the mirror. She realized that the index was not a cure. It was a weapon that could be wielded by anyone who wanted to profit from others' despair. The second twist arrived when an unknown hacker, calling himself Spectre, reached out to her. Spectre revealed that he had also found the quantum index. He wanted Elena's data, his own code, to combine their knowledge and create a system that would not only predict crashes but also prevent them. He suggested a partnership. Elena was tempted. The idea of saving people, of preventing another 2008, of making the market a safe place felt noble. Yet she was also wary. Spectre was a ghost, a shadow that appeared only in online forums who had no track record. She had only one chance. In a storm-filled night, Elena decided to test her own moral compass. She wrote a script that would use the quantum index to identify the impending crash, but instead of shorting the market, she used the bot to buy the most heavily insured assets and sell the most vulnerable ones. Her algorithm would spread the risk. It would be a slow, steady wave that would reduce panic. It would also reduce the volatility that caused the market to spiral out of control. Her plan worked, but not as neatly as she imagined. The market still fell, but the crash was less severe. Millions of people avoided bankruptcy. Elena felt a sense of relief. She had used her discovery to protect people. The thrill of her first experiment was replaced by a deeper, more sustained feeling of accomplishment. But then a final twist: a group of bankers and politicians who had heard of her work called her a threat to the system. They wanted to shut her down. The police raided her apartment, seized her laptop, and shut her down. They filed a lawsuit. Elena was forced into hiding, her name was taken from the public ledger, her data destroyed. The quantum index was dismantled, and the market moved on. Yet the impact remained. A wave of market reforms, stricter risk assessments, and new regulations on data usage took shape, largely thanks to her quiet, desperate experiments. In the end, Elena sat in the quiet of her apartment, the city lights pulsing like a distant ocean. She thought about the quantum index, about how it had turned her life around and also torn it apart. She wondered if the market was a beast or a tool, if the knowledge was a gift or a curse. She thought about the people she had helped and the ones she had hurt. She thought about the idea that the quantum index had changed the way the market worked, making it more transparent but also more fragile. What if the real power isn't the index? She mused. What if it's the awareness that everyone, at least for a moment, could see the future and choose to act with kindness instead of greed? The city outside hummed. Elena closed her eyes, imagining a market where people looked not to the numbers but to each other, and used the knowledge of the quantum index to create a system that was not just about profit but about preservation. She didn't know if the quantum stock would return, or if the algorithm would be reborn in a new form. But she knew that the story she had lived would stay with her like a faint echo of a distant crash. And as the market ticked on, she wondered what other hidden indices might be waiting for someone brave enough to look and for a word brave enough to listen.
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.